Have you ever felt completely drained and couldn't point to a single thing that caused it? No deadline, no argument, no crisis, just this quiet heaviness that followed you through the day. Most people assume that if life looks fine on the outside, the exhaustion must be their own fault. Maybe they're lazy or ungrateful or just not trying hard enough. But what if the problem isn't you? And it isn't stress either. There's something that builds long before stress even shows up. A kind of internal static, a low hum of unprocessed thoughts and emotions that never quite gets loud enough to name, but never really goes away. Research suggests that the average mind generates tens of thousands of thoughts a day, and most of them go nowhere. They just circle. That kind of invisible accumulation adds up in ways we rarely measure. And understanding where it comes from might be the most important thing you do for yourself this year. Not to fix everything, but to finally see what's actually going on. You clear your schedule. You finally have a weekend with nothing urgent on it, and somewhere in the first hour of that quiet, you notice something uncomfortable. Your mind is still moving, not racing, not panicking, just moving, turning things over, revisiting, staying slightly ahead of a moment that hasn't arrived yet. You thought rest would come naturally once the pressure lifted, but the pressure lifted and rest didn't follow. And that gap between the calm outside and the hum inside is the thing most people never quite find words for. It's rarely the big things. It's the email you drafted in your head but never sent. The conversation that ended without resolution, where you kept thinking of what you should have said. The decision you've been circling for weeks without landing anywhere. None of these feel urgent. None of them would make the list of things stressing me out. But they stay. They don't file themselves away neatly. They just wait, hovering just at the edge of your attention, quiet enough to ignore and present enough to drain. What accumulates in a mind isn't always what was said. Sometimes it's everything. That almost was. You scroll for 20 minutes before bed. Nothing heavy, just the usual. Some news, some opinions, someone's bad day, someone else's highlight reel. You put the phone down and feel vaguely full in a way that isn't satisfying. The thing is, your brain didn't know you were just browsing. It processed all of it, flagged what mattered, tried to contextualize the rest, stored fragments it didn't know where to put. Information doesn't pass through us the way we assume it does. And for someone who already carries a lot internally, every piece of unconsumed input adds another layer to a pile that was already there. You never decided to take all of it in. You just forgot that taking in and processing aren't the same thing. There are relationships in your life that don't feel broken, exactly, just unresolved. A friendship where something shifted and you're not sure how to name it. A dynamic where you're always slightly careful, measuring your words before you speak. A conversation from months ago that still surfaces at odd moments. Not with pain, just with that particular kind of incompleteness. You've learned to carry these things without making them a problem, because functionally, they aren't. Life continues, but something in you stays alert around these people, stays slightly on. And alertness, even when it's quiet, costs something. The bill just comes later, in ways that are harder to trace. You probably don't think of yourself as an anxious person. You handle things. You stay composed in situations where others unravel. But underneath that composure, there's often a constant, low-level scan happening. Reading the room, anticipating what someone might need, catching problems before they become problems. It looks like competence from the outside. It feels like just being responsible from the inside. What it rarely gets called is work. Because no one assigned it to you, no one tracks it, and you've been doing it so long you've stopped noticing the effort. But the effort is there, and a mind that's always monitoring never fully puts the watch down. Even when there's nothing left to watch, At some point, most people develop a version of themselves that's meant for other people. Reliable, even-keeled, someone who doesn't take up too much space with their difficulties. It's not performance exactly. It's more like a commitment you made so long ago, you forgot it was a choice. And inside that commitment, there's a constant, barely audible negotiation. What to say, what to keep back, which parts of yourself are acceptable in this context, and which ones get quietly set aside. That negotiation is exhausting in a way that's hard to explain because it produces nothing visible. There's no output, just the ongoing cost of maintaining a distance between who you are and who you've decided to show up as. Over time, that distance starts to feel like the truth. You sleep. Some weekends you genuinely do nothing. And still, Monday morning arrives with a weight that 8 hours of sleep didn't touch. People around you seem refreshed by the same things that leave you unchanged. You wonder privately whether something is wrong with your capacity for rest. But rest and stillness aren't the same thing. A mind that's been running background processes all day doesn't stop because the body lies down. It keeps organizing, evaluating, rehearsing. The lights go out, the tabs stay open, and you wake up having rested your body while your mind kept quietly working through the night. The accumulation happens slowly enough that there's no clear moment where you could have said, "Here, this is where it started." It builds the way dust builds, not dramatically, just steadily, until one day the light catches it and you realize it's been there all along. Because none of it was ever loud enough to demand your attention, you learn to call it normal. And once something becomes normal, it stops being visible. You stop asking whether it should be there. You just carry it the way you carry everything else, quietly, competently, without making it anyone's problem. The strange thing is that the very qualities that helped you manage this well are the same ones that made it so easy to miss. You were too good at bearing it to ever question whether you had to. Maybe the most honest thing to take away from all of this isn't an answer. It's just the recognition that something has been running, quietly, consistently, beneath everything else, and you've been carrying it without ever quite naming it. And if that's true, it might be worth sitting with a question for a moment. Not, how do I fix this? But something softer. Like, what would it feel like to not have to manage it for a while? Not solve it, not understand it, just not carry it. There's something connected to that question, because a lot of people who live with this kind of inner noise don't reach for answers when they finally get a moment alone. They reach for silence. Not information, not insight, just quiet. And that craving, the one that feels almost irrational in how deep it goes, might be telling you something that solutions never quite reach.